A little while back, one of my star students in the Value Pricing Academy, a bookkeeper named Jessica Fox, did an extraordinary training session on how she's applied what she's learned in my pricing academy to how she goes about pricing bookkeeping work, and in particular, how she uses the effective pricing software, the scope questions she uses, how she comes up with the price. And so what I've got for you is the extract from that training video where she walks through exactly how she sets up effective pricing, how she uses it to get much better prices for her bookkeeping service. So let's go and watch that one now.
Thank you so much for having me. I see a lot of very familiar names, so I am happy to see you all. Those of you that don't know me, I started Florida Virtual Bookkeeper in 2016. Before then, I had been a corporate bookkeeper, so I was really good at the technical stuff, knew nothing about pricing. I didn't need to. When I decided to become a freelance bookkeeper in 2010, I had two clients. One tax accountant that kept me busy by giving me cleanup work and catch-up projects. So they told me how much they would pay me, and I would say, okay. So once again, I had no need to price. And the other one was a small nonprofit where I did it mostly out of the kindness of my heart. So I wasn't in it for the money, and I was really charging them pennies. When I officially hung my shingle in 2016, that's when I realized I really do not know how to be a bookkeeping business owner. So I thought I would just do what my previous tax accountant that I collaborated with did, charge by the hour. But because I was a new business owner, marketing is not really my thing. I used to say that sales was my Achilles heel, no, the past tense. I started to undercharge myself from the very beginning. And I did everything that Mark says you should not do, I did when I started. So I used to advertise on Craigslist, offering to price match. Can you believe that? In my website, I used to use keywords like affordable and cheap, thinking that that will get me SEO and make me competitive. But what I really did is that I had very slow growth for those first few years. And the clients that I was getting were not quality clients. I was making money, but I was also stressed out because I was not making enough money. And it reached a point where I felt like I wasn't being paid enough to make it worth my time to get out of bed and open a file. So something had to change. And that is when I decided to seek out and see, what are other people doing? There's got to be a better way. So I first came across Mark at around 2017. I started to subscribe to his email newsletter. I used to attend his free monthly webinars. I will catch his YouTube videos. And I started to get a pretty good idea that value pricing was the way to go. However, at that time, I had an unhealthy relationship with money. I had a poverty mindset I needed to overcome. So I wasn't really ready to take the leap and fully dive in. However, it did give me the motivation to make some changes. One of the things that I did is I transitioned into flat rate pricing. So while I wasn't value pricing right away, for those of you that have been doing this a while, and if you're new, you're gonna learn, value pricing is a journey. You're not gonna just decide one day, I am going to value price, take the stuff, implement it, and call it a day. It's a process that you need to internalize. And as you use it, you tweak it. In my opinion, it's never done. I have been implementing Mark's teachings for years, and it gets better every day, but there's always new things to learn, things to tweak and improve. So at least I made that transition to menu pricing, which helped, but it still was a shortcoming because I was leaving so much money on the table. Yes, I created packages, but I was not creating them correctly. And then I was putting my prices on the website, which I've learned since is a big no-no. So then people had that anchor in their mind. By the time they contacted me, they had this expectation of what their price should be, which then made it harder for me to try to justify charging them a different rate. So while I did a lot and I got to implement a lot of things from the free materials, it wasn't until 2019 when Mark released the How to Price Bookkeeping course that things really changed in my business very quickly. I bought the course, and because still at that time, my business was very small, so it was a big investment, I made the commitment that if I am spending this much money on something, I've got to get my money back. So I carved the time out. That first session, it was live 90-minute sessions. So I booked it in my calendar so I could attend live, because I knew that if I didn't catch it live, it's easy to procrastinate in catching up with the recording. And I was taking notes, but I didn't stop at taking notes. I then made it a point to implement something. There was so much information, it was not realistic to run a business and implement everything immediately. But at least I will make one big change in my business from each session. I am happy to report that before I finished taking the course, the changes that I made paid for the course. So that was my big wow moment of, we're up to something here. This is what I should have been doing all along. And that gave me the motivation to keep making the changes. Now, I do recommend very strongly, if you haven't yet, log on to the Academy and access the How to Price Bookkeeper course, because there is a lot of very valuable information. Those materials are really worth their weight in gold. I will tell you as I go along which are the parts that make the biggest impact in my business, but what I recommend is go through everything. Everything is valuable. I'll just tell you the things that really were like the wow change makers for me. So by then, I felt like I had a pretty good handle on value pricing. However, I still felt like a lot of things I was just guessing as I went along. At least my rates were higher. I no longer had any resentment about getting out of bed to open a file, because I was compensated on a much better level than I was. But I knew that I had not reached the ceiling of what I could do. I knew that I could get more and that I could attract better clients. So when Mark announced the Bookkeeper's Price Academy last year, I was all shut up and take my money. As soon as I heard about it, I dropped what I was doing, ran to get my wallet, enter my payment information, because I knew this is what I needed. Before then, I was aware of the Value Pricing Academy, but it just felt like too much. There was too much information. I wasn't ready for all that information. So the BPA was a really nice transition for me. I saw it as my value pricing kindergarten until I was ready to graduate to Value Pricing Academy this year. So I hope that most of you will relate, at least with parts of my story, because you may have been there before, you may be there now. If there is one piece of advice that I can give you is, do not make the mistakes that I made, where I would listen to a webinar and Mark would say, do this. And I will have a little bit of a rebellious response of, yeah, it sounds nice, but I won't. Because really, I wasted a lot of time not implementing critical steps that would have gotten me further along my journey faster. So definitely check out the course. I will share very shortly what I am using, how I am using it with my clients, and how I have come up with my packages and price bookkeeping. But before I show you that, I need to explain how is it that I got an idea on how to create those packages. So if there's any parts of the course that I recommend that you check out in the Academy, one of them is the regression analysis. This is actually homework, and I fought it at first. And the first time that I did it, I will admit it, I cheated and I did not finish it. And I paid for that. So watch the video. Mark explains what this means and what it does, and you have a downloadable resource so that you can do it. This regression analysis is where I created a list of all of my clients, how much I charge them, the services that I offer, and I got to plot them in a line to see how they're falling price-wise. The first thing that I saw right off the bat was the older the client, the worse my pricing was. So the good news is I had been improving as I went along. I just hadn't fixed the mistakes from the past. But repricing existing clients is a topic for a different day. But what this regression analysis helped me to do is to come up with the meaningful scope factors for my business. Because when you're going through the training, one of the things that you need to be aware of in order to build your bookkeeping packages, to know what scope questions to ask, to build your price, is to have some scope factors. You will normally have a primary scope factor and then secondary ones. And this will be different for each business. For some people, it may be number of bank accounts. A very popular one that I hear is amount of transactions. So that's what I started. I started with my primary scope factor being number of transactions. But I quickly learned that not every transaction is the same. I may have a business with 100 transactions that I can do very quickly because they're all reoccurring, they're all pre-configured rules. There's hardly anything I need to do. And then I could have another business with 25 transactions. But if each of those transactions are complex, there may be job costing, class allocation, or some other complexity to it that meant it could not be automated and it will take me a long time. So think in your business and with the clients that you work, what do you feel would be the best scope factor for you to determine, at least as a base, to then build your price from? Is it gonna be number of transactions? Is it gonna be number of bank accounts? Is it gonna be the size of the business? How much revenue? Their industry? There is no one size fits all answer. What I've learned in my journey is to do not make my mistake, is do not copy what somebody else is doing. Just because it's working for them does not mean it's perfect for you. Take the samples that are given to you. A lot of the groundwork is already done for you. You just need to download these resources from the academy. And just like when you go to the clothing store and you're trying clothes, you try it on for size. And if it doesn't fit, then you tweak it. It doesn't mean that just because it doesn't fit, you're going to take it off and discard it. It just needs to be taken in on the side a little. Maybe it needs some hemming, but you can get it customized and fitting exactly for what you need to, so that it will work for your business. So I am about to go show you what my brochure looks like, how I present this information to my clients. So because I am a fully virtual firm, I actually do not print my brochures. So instead, what I did is I got a software that makes my PDF brochure looks like physical paper. So then I can, when I am meeting with the client via Zoom, I can turn the page and can start talking to them. So here's what I was talking about just a moment ago about the pain. All of our prospects come to us with some form of pain. It could be that it's tax time and they have no numbers to give to their tax preparer. It could be that they tried to do their own books and they were in over their head and made a mess of it. It could be that they tried to do their own books but got busy and they just can't keep up. So I will normally be asking the prospect in advance, get some information so that I'll know which parts from here I would focus on. I don't read the entire brochure from beginning to end because it will put me to sleep, so I will put them to sleep. I just focus specifically on the parts. So it could be that, hey, you have to do the books. You know, it is hard to do. Or man, I can really feel that you missed your baby's first steps because you were trying to catch up your QuickBooks. And this is a true story. This was the pain point of a client. When she missed her first child's first steps, that's when she realized something's got to give. So how you structure this will vary depending on who your ideal client is. And you can tweak this and evolve this as you get practice. But in the academy, in the course, you have really good text to get started with. A lot of this text is straight from that sample. All that I did was retweak some wording, cut some of it out. I did make mine shorter. You will know how to adapt yours. Then I can move on to discussing the actual packages. But before I show them the ticks and the check marks, I like to get a better understanding of what type of business owner they are, because each package is kind of customized towards a different avatar. This is a type of person, because not every business owner is the same. Some, they just want to get the tax man off their back. They just want to get their taxes done and not have to worry about it. And they don't care about bells and whistles. So that will normally be better suited to be in my essential package. That could also be a person that either they're very cost conscious, and note that I am doing that little quotation marks right there, because it usually just means that they don't value bookkeeping yet until I get to demonstrate why it's valuable to them. So they may start at the essential plan, and then they may change to a different plan. And then I got my middle plan, which is the most popular one. It's for the busy business owner that just wants the peace of mind of knowing that the books are up to date, and whenever they need information to make a decision, they'll have that information. But there's also the business owner that they are ambitious. They want to know the details. They want to grow. They need that information. And that is where the Vert Premium plan comes in. So I usually will spend some time trying to get a better understanding of where they're coming from, to have a better idea of what plan they may be more likely to be into. And then I can go into my actual plan. This is actually a condensed version, because if I were to spell out everything, it would be 2 pages and the client will glaze over. So I tell them, when the essential things you need to be compliant, that's when I start listing everything that is tedious, that they don't want to do, but it's important to be done. I tell them, I will post all of your transactions. I'll make sure that they are allocated correctly to the correct accounts. If they do job costing or they have class tracking, I will mention that those things will also be recorded. I will then make sure that your transfers are posted to the correct account. I will reconcile your accounts to make sure that the book balance matches the statement balance, so that you know that nothing is missing, nothing is duplicated. You guys are probably glazing over right now. That's exactly what the prospect does. So I'm usually looking at their camera on Zoom, and when I see their eyes is glazed over, I'm like, okay, this is a good time to transition, because I am not trying to put them to sleep. I am trying to get them to understand, wow, there's a lot more to this bookkeeping thing that I thought. Because I get this a lot when a prospect first contacts me, and many of you probably do, when they say, oh, my books are simple. It shouldn't take long. It should be easy. So by me spelling out what I am doing for them, they realize, oh, it's not that quick. It's not that easy. And then they realize, wow, that is definitely something that I don't want to have to do myself. I want to hear more. So then I can move on to the other items. And I can then, because I already had a fairly decent idea of where they were in their journey and what package they may be more geared to, I can then emphasize different benefits and features depending on what their pain is and what is important to them. Right, so now I'm going to move to effective pricing, and I am going to show you what is the process that I go through with a prospect to come up with their bookkeeping price. So hopefully I haven't been signed out. We'll find out in just a moment. Oh, good. I did not get inactive. So I have a test client that I use for all of my testing. It's Zorro test client. For those of you that don't know, Zorro is fox in Spanish. So that's why it shows that name. It also puts it at the bottom of the list. And I really have not tapped into the power of keywords very well. So far, the only keyword that I have for this is the year end, but I do plan to extend on that further, but that is not relevant to today's contents. So once I get the client basic information created, I then go into the questions. At this stage of the process, I will have already completed a diagnostic health check, so I will know the answer to some of these questions. So what I will usually do is that I will start the model right before our student session, and I will fill in some of the first few questions. So that way, when I am meeting with the client, I am only asking those that I need their input. So by this point, I already know what industry they're in. I do not support all of these industries. I do have a somewhat of a niche, but I learned that if I do not include those industries here, I may come across a scenario where I may want to quote a prospect and I want that factor in. The reason why I ask for the industry is because in this dropdown, in the back end, there is a multiplier that does math automatically for me, so I don't have to think about it. There are some industries that are more complex than others. So e-commerce, it will add a multiplier to my base rate than if it was just a professional service business. So if you serve multiple industries, that is something that you may want to consider doing. They're not all the same. Some have some nuances. In the United States, construction can be quite a bit of work, more than, say, healthcare or real estate. So depending on who you work with, that is something that you may want to consider. So in this scenario, I am going to say that they're a nonprofit, and then I ask them the software. The reason for this is because while I prefer QuickBooks Online and 95% of my clients are on it, I am also Xero certified. I do support Xero, but because I do not know Xero like the back of my hand, it takes me a little bit longer to do books in Xero, especially if I'm doing rescues. So for that, I factor this in. So if they're on Xero, it actually goes up 10%. The software does this automatically in the back end. I set it and forget it. It's beautiful. So keep that in mind if you are supporting multiple software programs and you have preferences. That is something that you can consider. Then I already know their revenue based on the review that I made. And this is one of my scope questions that I use is their payment processing accounts. It used to be a year or two ago, if a client took online payments, they just had one account, QuickBooks Payments or Square, and that's it. What I am finding since last year and the pandemic, they may have PayPal, they may have Stripe, and they may have QuickBooks Payments. And they all have their nuances, and it can be extra work to account for that, especially those like Stripe and Square that deduct their fees before depositing the funds in the bank. So let's just say that this client has two, and then I save and continue. This information here, I also got from the diagnostic review, so I don't have to ask the prospect. When I used to ask the prospect, I never got accurate information. So I will tell you that much. If you're relying on the prospect to tell you how many transactions per month they have, you're not going to get accurate information. Even when asking them about their bank accounts, they will tell me, oh, I just have one account. And I will start doing the books and I see all these transfers. And I'm asking them, what are these transfers for? Oh, that's my business savings, and that's my money market, and that's my, and there's all these other accounts that because they don't use on a frequent basis, they forget that exist. So this is another benefit of having done diagnostic review beforehand, because you know exactly what you're walking into. I do ask how many credit cards they have, because they can be slightly different from bank accounts. It can be a little bit more complicated to reconcile depending on the card and the volume. So I do factor the transaction volume, and then I will also see if they're on accrual or cash basis, because that does make a difference. Cash basis books are a lot simpler than having to make accrual adjustments and keeping track of accounts payable and accounts receivable and all of that fun stuff. Now, just to let you guys know, this was based on the model that you get with your effective pricing subscription, but I then added and removed and reworked and recalculated the math. So use that as your foundation. And once again, try it on for size and tweak it as you go along. So I don't remember that the original model asked about loans and license credits. I do, because it's something that I'm going to have to be calculating and posting interest on each month. So it's extra work. It should be separate from the rest of the bookkeeping. And this question here, this was one of those learn from my past mistakes. I had not asked these questions in the past because it wasn't common. But nowadays I am encountering more and more clients, at least in the US, that use peer-to-peer apps to either collect payments for clients or to pay contractors and vendors. And if you've used Venmo, it's a nightmare. Their reports are horrible. That's extra work. So it's something I like to know and factor in. In the US, unfortunately, checks are very popular still among businesses. And if they're writing checks by hand, it means I will not have that information in the bank feed. It may not be attached in the statement. I may need to log on to the bank, pull up check images, or nag my client to send me their check register. So I want to know that as well, because if they do, the software will calculate accordingly to make sure that I am compensated for that extra work. If they're registered for sales tax, that does play a role as well. And then another thing that I've learned from my journey and tweaking, because what will happen is anytime I use this model and I onboard a new client, I assess. Now, like, was the model accurate? Did it give me a good picture of what the work is going to look like? And if I felt that something was submitted, I then add it as a new question so that I can ask the next prospect. So one thing that I've added is, how are they invoicing? Because that plays a role on your data entry, especially if they're on accrual. So if they're not doing invoicing, every deposit, you just post to sales. Easy peasy. But if they have an e-commerce card, now we're talking integrations and reconciling those disbursal reports. If they are using a third-party app to invoice, it may or may not be connected to the books. So depending on their answer, I will select from the drop-down. Now somebody will ask me, well, what if they do too? What if they send invoices via QuickBooks, but they also have an online card on their website? Then in that scenario, I will select the e-commerce card because that's more work. So that's learn from my mistakes if this is something that you feel you may encounter. Then I want to find out if there are posting payroll journals. If they don't have any payroll, then that's less work for me, less time me investing in their file. But if they do have payroll, that's something that I need to know and consider. And foreign currency. If they are using their credit card for foreign currency purchases, the credit card does the conversion themselves. But I do have some clients that use TransferWise. And that means those are essentially additional bank accounts. And then I have to turn on multi-currency in their books and calculate realized and unrealized gains and losses. So that is something that I do want to know. So if you feel that you're going to deal with a client with that, you may want to include that as one of your questions. And then this is where I bring the client in. And because everybody wants the compliance. But what else would you also like? So I asked them, do you want me to track and report on your outstanding bills? And they'll tell me, oh yeah, that sounds nice, please do. Then, but do you want me to pay the bills on your behalf? Most of the time they'll say, no, I'll take care of paying them. Do you want me to invoice your clients? Oh yes, please, invoicing is time consuming. Now, do you want me to track and report on your outstanding invoices? This is different from just verifying that the AR balance is correct. This means that I am actually letting them know, hey, this person owes you money and they've been past due 2 weeks. So they may say yes or no. And then we go to other things that they might want. In the US, there isn't a requirement to have every receipt attached to the transaction like it is in other countries. So a lot of business owners don't opt for that, but I do offer that option. But I do have some that they already have Receipt Bank or Dext. So if I don't have to pay for the subscription, they'll say, yes, but please use my account. Or, oh yes, I'd like you to do that. Please set me up. So my most recent prospect, they came with the account. So that's what we selected. And then I asked them, do you want me to track income and expenses for each of your divisions, programs, locations? This really applies for nonprofits, but it can also apply for other industries like construction. I have one plumber that they want to track commercial versus residential versus new construction. And this is based on a previous question where it was asking how many locations you have. So it will do the math based on that selection. Job costing. Job costing can be a headache. So if they say yes to that, I'd like to know before I go in. And then I ask them how often they want me to update their books. I do not offer daily bookkeeping, but I do offer other frequencies. And then they can tell me how often they want me to come in and make sure everything is up to date. So let's say this client said twice a month. Now, when I click Save and Continue, it's going to take me to the packages. As you see, these packages are a little bit more descriptive than the ones in the brochures because it actually tells them the frequency of some things and when the processing will be completed by. Because a mistake I see a lot of bookkeepers doing, and I did it too, is I told everybody your books are going to be done by the 10th of the month. And then those first 10 days of the month were pure stress because I had to do everybody's books at once. Now, for those that value that timeliness, they're also the ones that value my premium package. So once I go and discuss once again and highlight the merits of the package, and I have an idea of which plan they are more aligned into, they say, oh, you know, the standard seems like a good fit, and I select that. Then I click reveal the price and it will show them the monthly payments. Sometimes they will be like, oh, sounds great. And when they do that, I make a mental note, I need to jack up my rates again. And if they go, oh, that's more than I expected, then I can say, well, no problem. We can customize this. So then we can go back and I say, well, you told me that you wanted me to update your books twice a month. Will you be okay if I only go in monthly? And then they say yes, I can go back, adjust that, save and continue, and then their rate is adjusted accordingly. I do have behavioral rewards configured, but to be quite honest, I don't always use them because if the prospect seems happy with the prices, why am I going to offer discounts? But if they're still reluctant, then I can ask them, well, do you feel that you can set up view-only logins for all of your accounts for me within 7 days of onboarding? If they say yes, that's going to save me a lot of time because I'm not going to have to be checking my portal to see if they uploaded their statements, nag them because they forgot, or like what happened earlier today, nag them because they uploaded the wrong month. That is valuable to me, so I reward them for that. Just like I was mentioning earlier about foreign currency, if they're going to keep all of those transactions in a credit card, that's valuable to me. It helps me. And then this is one that I added a month ago, and it's already paying off. Where are you willing to provide a video testimonial after we complete the first month of service? That is very valuable to me because those testimonials are getting me new clients, so I can then offer those options for them. So then depending on if they say yes or no, their rate can be adjusted accordingly, and then they got their price. Now I do have some enhancements configured in effective pricing. I will admit, I don't really push much of these guys, the popular add-ons, because this is something that I would have already covered if I was doing setup or rescue for them. But sometimes the opportunity may come to be able to just add it. So it's there. What I do find very valuable, and this is something that I love about effective pricing, is that I can have premium add-ons available for an extra fee if somebody selected an essential or standard plan. So maybe they don't want all of the bells and whistles of the premium plan, but they do want to get additional reporting. They can select that here. So this is a very valuable feature because it's kind of like, to me, this is the equivalent of you did your shopping and you're at the register, and while you're waiting to check out, you saw a magazine that looks very interesting or this candy that looks delicious, and you just added it to your cart. I don't come in expecting to upsell these items, but sometimes they end up buying services that I at first may have thought they did not want or need.
So if you're not yet using effective pricing and you want to find out more, I'll put a link in the description below where you can find out about the software. But also I do lots of videos on my YouTube channel here from live training sessions. And what I will do is, if you've never used the software before, I will suggest as a next video one of those live trainings, which is ideal for you if you want to understand a bit more about what the software does, what's the purpose of it. And if you've enjoyed this video, please give the thumbs up and feel free to subscribe. I will see you on another video soon. Bye for now.